budget deliberations. So I'd now like to call today's meeting to order. I do wish to begin by acknowledging that we are having this meeting on the territories of the Sauk and Sianu Nations. Item number 3 is approval of today's agenda. However, there is an amendment. There was just a carryover. So if I put my glasses on, it should read with approval of the agenda to be amended, and the amendment would be under item 4. And that would be striking out, or it would be that council resolve into committee of the whole to consider information to replace with the district's 5-year financial plan. So the amendment is to remove district development procedures and processes and replace with the district's 5-year financial plan. So I'll look for today's agenda to be amended with that amendment, please. Moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Councillor Lajeunesse, can you see the screen and can you hear us clearly?
I can hear you, but I don't see the screen.
Okay.
I don't share this presentation. I'll share the finance presentation, but I don't share this one to data.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what I've learned is that when the presentation comes line, then that will be what you'll see.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for that. Next item here would be then that council resolve into committee of the whole to consider information related to the district's good grief. That consider information related to the district's 5-year financial plan. So look for a motion, please, by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So now, council, we are sitting as committee of the whole. As you know, this is where only one motion is required for matters. And we'll move right into our staff report. So now, Councillor Lajeunesse, there is a screen that is being shared with you, and that's the presentation that you'll see. And I will turn it over to staff, please. And Councillor Lajeunesse, I've made a note to myself that you are virtual, but anytime if there's any housekeeping, like the screen or the audio disappearing, if you have questions, just raise a point of personal privilege and I'll be able to hear you that way. Okay, thank you. Over to staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. For today's presentation, I'm going to provide an introduction and overview of the challenges, highlights, and changes proposed in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. I'm going to provide a comparison to show where Sauk ranks in total general municipal taxes collected compared to other municipalities, and I'll review capital, debt, reserves, and next steps. I'd just like to request that the committee hold for any service level questions, and each department will be here at the next budget meeting to answer specific questions to their department. And also they'll provide a review of the capital projects, and you'll have an opportunity to deep dive into each of the capital projects. So when the subject experts are here, I'm going to reserve those questions for them to answer, but I will provide a financial overview of everything that is in the financial plan book that's in front of you today. So also for today, I guess what I'm requesting is if the committee just listens and asks any questions along the way as I go. I'm going to move pretty quick. And after the next budget meeting as well, once we present the service levels, if the committee could provide some direction with where you would like us to go with the budget from the information received. So where the budget began is that originally, we started in the summer of 2023 for preparing for the 2024 budget. This includes the annual budget survey, which the prep work starts in June, and then the surveys take place between June and August at different community events. Then the results of this survey is presented to council in November 2023. The early budget development, which is done by staff, usually myself working with each of the department heads across the organization, where we start reviewing operating budget changes and capital at the same time. And this goes on throughout the fall from September to December. Next step for the budget, we had the asset management plan. This was almost 2 years in the making with Urban, and that was presented to council in December of 2023. from Mr. Carter's team. Then we are at today, which is 3B, budget overview and introduction. So here all the work that's gone into preparing this 5-year financial plan. And today we're going to review that and any changes that are included with that plan. Next on the horizon is staff presentations and service level reviews in March, with the hope to get first 3 readings on the bylaw following the service level presentations, followed by a open house, and where we'll allow the public to come in and review and receive feedback again from where the status was left after the service level reviews. And the last would be the early adoption, either by the end of March or early in April, is our hope to adopt the budget. So the District of Sauk's public process includes 2 phases of engagement. Phase 1, a budget survey, community pop-ups at local markets from June 21 to August 20th. Phase 2 is the budget open house that's going to be happening in March after the first 3 readings of the bylaw are provided. Public engagement on the budget begins in mid-June with the annual budget survey and community pop-ups. For budget 24, oops, sorry, just lost my place. For budget 2024, the survey closed mid-August and more than 1,000 residents participated through the phase of the engagement. What we heard in the budget survey, we looked to residents to understand more what they support for the asset management program. Of the respondents who answered this question, over half indicated that they would need more information. So 40%, 0.9 expressed willingness to contribute to $1 a month or $5 a month towards the program. The majority of these respondents, 19.5%, indicated that they would support an asset management program of $5 per month. So included in today's budget is 2% for asset management. This equals to $2.39 per month per household at an amount of $28.68 per year. So just to reiterate again, that the 19.5% of the respondents had said they were willing to pay $5 a month, and we're just less than half of that what's provided in the budget today. So this next slide here, this shows a quote from the asset management program provided by Urban, that the success of the program relies on the implemental increases in the strategy to add roughly 2% a year to reach the district's long-term financial targets. So again, we've included this in the plan, and this will give us to the target of reaching close to $5 million by 2047. So this is the effort to essentially have enough funds to cover maintenance and replacement and maintenance of our existing infrastructure. So further on public engagement, a key aspect of the budget survey was seeking to understand the resident priorities. The top priorities outlined on this slide you'll see are reflected in the budget and also highlighted during the upcoming service level review. So the ability to safely walk or bike around Sauk, traffic planning and management, including road maintenance, emergency response services, parks and green space, health and wellness services, and community planning. So the district is facing several pressures in its 2024 budget that are not unique to Sauk, but reflective of what is occurring in other municipalities and other sectors. We see this at the grocery store, gas stations, and in every aspect of our lives. The economic realities are that residents are facing are difficult, and the proposed budget is conscious of this reality, even though the percent proposed may yield some initial sticker shock. So just to highlight some of these challenges when preparing the budget, some significant inflation pressures, cost of goods and services, labor increases due to bargaining contracts. So the QP agreement, exempt agreements in place, and the IAFF agreements, and employee benefits. These are costs that are out of our control, and there are contract obligations. Aging infrastructure was mentioned through the asset management program. A backlog of fixing and replacing this the aging infrastructure. So we'll do the work that we can afford to do now, and then everything that isn't an emergency gets put on the backlog, but is still due for replacement or maintenance. Challenges to fund the capital plan is another one that other municipalities are facing, and is pretty clear throughout our 5-year capital plan, which I'll touch on later. Senior levels of government. So again, a lot of our ability to complete replacement and maintenance right now is dependent on receiving grant funds from other levels of government. So you'll see like the BC Building Fund that we're able to get quite a bit done in the next 2 years, and with the COVID Restart Fund as well. And then those dry up, and then we're kind of at a point where the next big projects will have to be borrowed for, or we're going to be waiting for the next grant to come down. Some staff challenges that we have is workforce shortages, loss of institutional knowledge. So when we're losing key staff that have been here for a lot of years, that's an impact to the overall cost, because it's going to cost us a lot of money to catch up, one, to rehire those people, and then just to catch up the corporate knowledge. Staff burnout. So missing those people, you also have to, there's staff burnout because the rest of us are picking up the slack. Increase in health leaves. So that we're seeing that as well, just the same as other municipalities are. With those 3 things I just mentioned, they equal the increase in health leaves. And as well with that, another challenge we have is fully funding these approved positions that were done in 2023. So in order to meet the tax rate that was requested for 2023, we had to partially fund some of the approved positions. So this budget plays catch up with that funding. So we're moving those positions to 100% funding, and although they're already here, and so that creates a challenge. So we're already looking at a tax increase before we even start the budget process. Lastly, the community safety. So funding the RCMP contract to 90%. So when we moved up to when we hit the 15,000 person threshold on the last census report, now we're paying 90% of the RCMP costs. Then we're still playing catch up for that. We've offset that with reserves, and now we're slowly trying to decrease the amount of funding we're relying on from reserves and move this over to taxes, because it's an operating cost. And also the need for additional fire resources to meet the increasing population and density demands. So moving to the 24/7 coverage and just keeping up with the increased population. That's another challenge that we're facing in this budget today. So now the next few slides are going to provide a highlight of what's also included in the budget. So as I just mentioned, an investment in community safety through additional enhanced resourcing for RCMP, bylaw, and fire. A 2% lift for the asset management programs. This is an additional $218,000 for asset management and replacement, and an increase to account for inflation, contractual, and wage increases. So this is to essentially offset the cost of the wage increases through the collective agreement for both the QP staff and for the firefighters and for exempt staff, in addition to just funding 100% of wages that were previously approved. Some additional highlights that are included in the budget. So I'll keep mentioning this, the 24/7 fire services, 24/7 police services, bylaw resources. So we've funded a part-time bylaw officer to help for half of the year. Updating the official community plan, 2% for the asset management. We've added procurement resources. So there's $20,000 included in budget so that we can continue using a procurement consultant who has been helping us improve some of our procurement practices and has been hand-holding us as we do requests for proposals and some of the other competitive procurement that is required to do once we hit the $75,000 threshold. The continued construction of the Church Road roundabout and the Charters Road corridor. So those were both approved in budget in 2023, and those carry forward to 2024. Part of the the Charters Road corridor is they funded 2/3 for 2024 and 1/3 in 2025. Just with the delay in getting the construction started this year, we're anticipating it to carry forward over to the new year. The continued implementation of the transportation master plans included in this budget, and that includes the design of the Throop Road Connector, the Highway 14 Charters intersection design, the design of the Phillips Road Connector, and the Wadhams Transit Exchange design, and the Ella Road design. So a lot is happening with the transportation master plan moving forward. The Ravens Ridge Park enhancements, Whiff and Spit master planning are also all included in here, and we'll provide a deeper dive on those with the service level reviews at the next budget meeting. Some staffing changes included this $423,000 for 3 new firefighters. 2 firefighters are confirmed, and one is started, another one is starting in March. And we're requesting a 3rd to start early in June. That was anticipated to start in 2025. So you'll see that as a discretionary item in the budget. There's $35,000 to increase the wastewater eng tech that was funded. That was approved last year, but funded only for 6 months. So this is the remainder of that, the funding for that position. Same for the emergency program manager, $73,000. We're funding it to 100% now. $392,000 increase to the RCMP contract to fund 14 police. So this is bringing, again, catching up the funding for the police contract. So right now we'll have approved, we'll have 16 people approved in contract and 14 funded. So our letter is unique where it says how many are approved by contract and then how many are actually funded. And they're, I believe they're operating with around 10 or 11, give or take that one person on the timing of leaves. They have 42,000 added for bylaw auxiliary support and 20,000 added for general support for auxiliary support for general support clerks. So that 20,000 for the support clerks is to offset some more for when there's vacation coverages or any leaves or movement around the office, that we have someone available to come in and fill a spot just to help with avoid burnout and also just keep the work flowing and not leaving a vacant spot while the person's away. Very high level look at the total budget that's in front of you is $42.9 million. There's $18.2 million in capital and $24.7 million in operating expenses. The plan is an evolving document where each year is based on resident input through the annual budget survey, and the preceding budget year is refined and adopted throughout the year as forecasts are made and as we like, I guess, amend to what's happening around us. Through plan revisions and to build this plan, we look to find efficiencies and cost savings in operations while prioritizing community safety and investment in infrastructure development and the eventual asset replacement. This slide here just shows where the money comes from. So 61% of our revenue is received from property taxes. 4% is from fees and charges. The reason.
Yours hasn't changed?
Oh, that was.
Okay, I was seeing it on that one. So, okay, just a delay. So where the money comes from, 61% of property taxes, 4% for fees and charges. So with the fees and charges bylaw that has 3 readings right now before council, we're looking at more opportunities to move more to add more fees where they're adequate, where different services are impacting specific, I guess, where services are impacting specific departments and looking for ways to recover these services. So that recent change does impact the budget and would save, say, 0.5% of a tax increase by making that change that council's recently done in the fees and charges bylaw. Again, with license and permits, that's more going to be based on what's happening in the economy and in your building community. So right now for 2024, we've just projected with pretty similar numbers to 2023, with not knowing what's going to be happening with construction starts this year. 1% here is shown from non-market growth through property taxes. So we're staying pretty stable with an estimate of $250,000 to $300,000 a year in non-market growth. That's the new construction added. Where the money goes, general operations 44%, sewer 11, police 17, fire and emergency 15, municipal debt 3%, and transfer to reserve 10%. So the transfer to reserve is money that's received through revenue. So say, for instance, the community building fund, which is the gas tax fund, we receive that money as it's recognized as revenue, then it's transferred to a reserve right away. So you see it on both sides. You'll see it on the revenue side and as an expense. And the same goes for the casino revenue that we receive. So there's $260,000 a year we receive for our share of the casino revenue. That goes into revenue, is counted as revenue, but then goes right back into transfer to reserve as an expense to the reserve account. How the money is spent. So RCMP, fire and sewer are the larger portion of our operations budget. You can see the second item at the bottom there, amortization. This is a non-cash expense, which means that it does not require cash outflow, but it does reduce the asset's value. So it's here. It's not. You'll see it on the 5-year or the consolidated financial plan. It has an offset, so you'll see it on revenue and on expense. So it's not actually counted through like taxes, and it's not offset by a revenue. So it's just shown for accounting purposes. One thing to mention on this here is that finance and IT include insurance and software. So this is like a kind of more of a corporate expense, but they're shown here. So software licensing is now up to $180,000 a year, where insurance is now up to $260,000 a year. That's insurance for liability and for property. Okay, so the proposed general fund changes, these, now I'm getting into the changes. This is a summary of the changes for the complete operating budget. So this is a higher level of everything that has changed in the budget. The non-market growth offsets the tax increase required for this year. The COVID reserve offsets the tax increase in the police reserve. So we're using 125,000 of the police reserve to offset some of the police increase. And we're using 187,000 as previous years to offset some of the operating costs as well. Revenue changes. So we made a few revenue adjustments in that $280,000. That includes the fees and charges changes that we're anticipating from the recent changes from the fees and charges bylaw. And the Fire Smart grant here for $178,000. This offsets the Fire Smart position that you'll see later on, and also the Fire Smart operating expenses. So it's shown split, but it is a zero impact to taxes as the revenue offsets the expenses. So total revenue changes here is the $1,039,000. This next slide here is the non-discretionary expenses. So non-discretionary expenses are considered mandatory. We're bound to collective agreement increases, benefit increases, contracts, and inflation pressures on mandatory costs like insurance and software. We're catching up the funding for the 14 RCMP members. We currently have approved 16, as mentioned earlier, and 14 in 2024 are budgeted. We're easing off on the transfer from the police reserve. So the 5-year budget includes using the police reserve for 2024 and 2025, and then no longer past that will be the police will be fully funded from taxation. One of the notable items here, the WorkSafe BC premium, so the WCB premium, $199,000. Our rates have doubled from 2022, so we're playing catch up on the increase here. The rates were 1.9% in 2022, and they're now 4.13. So it's a $200,000 impact to the budget. I wanted to show these individual benefits just so that typically we'd sometimes lump these together as benefits, and it gets assumed that they're all extended health or dental benefits, but I wanted to show the true impact of each of these, which are out of our control. And we received the update of these new rates, and then we have to essentially find the funds to offset them. Another thing to mention is that inflation has impacted our dental and extended health costs. So where dental costs are have gone up significantly due to inflation, and our benefit plan is cost plus. So we pay the actual cost of what people use for the dentist and for extended health, plus a small percentage. So we may have years where we less people use the dentist and it may fluctuate. And we'll have a surplus that gets like forwarded to the following year. So when the costs of the dentist go up, so do our benefit costs, and that's what we're facing here. Also, there's additional staff that have been added, the impact for them for all of these premiums as well. So they all increase. Just want to pause here and see if there's any questions before I move on.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre.
Just a couple of quick ones. I was wondering what the inflation rate was for 2024 that's being used at this point.
Inflation 3.7, I believe, was the annual average as of December 31st.
Okay. And you mentioned that we have, I think, 11 police officers that are available for work right now. But I think 14 was mentioned as what was budgeted, and we're looking at, I think, budgeting for 2 more. So what happens, given that we don't ever seem to be quite able to get up to full complement, what happens to the money that's budgeted that isn't spent on wages?
So we receive a surplus that is typically put into the police reserve. So each year, if we have a $400,000 surplus from the positions that aren't funded, we put it into the reserve. So however, for last year, for 2023, we received the invoice for the retro amount from 2022 of them moving to the 90%. So that decision was on hold, and there was a possibility that we weren't going to have to pay the 90% as quick as anticipated, and they were going to pause it for municipalities. We didn't set up a liability for that because when we were processing year end, we were told that municipalities weren't going to be responsible for it. It wasn't on our auditor's radar or our radar. And now we received I think it's a $550,000 bill for the retroactive amount, which would have been our surplus amount for 2023. So 2023 is pretty lean as far as having a surplus. So we have what we have in the police reserve now. We add 85,000 to it each year. And then if there is a surplus, we'll transfer that into it as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pearson.
So far, so good.
Thanks.
So a general question, what does 1% in revenue represent in dollars for us?
Oh, it used to be almost
100,000.
100,000, and it's just a little bit higher than that. So
Okay.
I think it's 109, 110-ish.
Okay, good, thank you. So you mentioned in the capital plan, 3.6 million for parks. That seemed to be high. Like it stuck out off that chart for me.
All right, for the capital projects.
Yeah.
So the Demaniel Creek project is on for 3 million.
Okay.
So I believe majority of that is for that project.
Okay.
And it has I think close to 2 million in grants, and then the 1 million is our side.
Okay, yeah, it just.
Oh, and the sport box, the Ravens Ridge Park as well.
Okay, and then the COVID and the police reserves at 187 and 125K, you're pulling them down every year. How much time do we have left?
I have a slide that has a reserve schedule. I can show you
Yeah. Okay.
how much time is left. The COVID reserve, everything that's in 2024, the COVID reserve will be zero at the end of the year.
Right.
So we've been asked to, I think we have a time limit on using those funds. So we've deliberately zeroed out that fund. And then we have the BC Building Fund that still will have funds at the end of 2024. But I can kind of walk you through the level, what's funded.
Yeah.
A little bit later on.
Yeah, it just looks like there's 3% sitting there when those both run out, right?
It's close, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I had a question through you to Mr. Curry on the non-market growth and how you determine that 268,000 number, which then increases to 285 over the rest of the 5 years and then drops to 250 in 2028. So how do you calculate that? Is that based on anticipated housing starts, et cetera?
So with the one for 268 is precise because we received the non-market numbers from BC Assessment. We received them in November and then they're updated at the end of December. We did an exercise this year with staff where we had discovered one of those new town, like the duplexes on charters hadn't received an improvement value. And we just dug into a little bit. So none of the houses on charters, there were 6 of them that had not received a value for their house, and they're only assessed as the land. So we did an exercise to figure out all the other pieces of land that have had building, but have essentially don't have an improvement on it. And we sent it back to the BC assessment. And through that, we are having close to $6.6 million in houses added to the non-market just through like someone spending half a day and running that report. So that's precise. And then we actually calculate the tax rate with the current amount proposed to get the 268. So the years forward are really just our best guess. So I think hopefully with a full team of planners will be able to forecast better the housing starts. I asked that question a lot throughout the office to get an idea for forecasting DCCs, and I'll ask of land that's available and what could potentially come through so that I can have an accurate number in DCCs. I think we'll get there eventually where it'll be more exact, but each year it's going to change to what the non-market report says. So it is just an estimate at this point for the years forward, based on what we have received in the last couple of years.
Thank you. So the system will keep evolving, and so with those major incoming projects, which might skew things quite dramatically, but are they part of this?
They're not yet,
No,
but they
okay.
wouldn't be until they come on the non-market.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that's fair because we don't know the rate at how fast they're going to build once they do put a shovel in the ground. So it really comes down to like when you're doing the budget process, as long as it's after that first non-market change report, then you have a pretty good idea. I think you do get a really big step forward if you get, say, instead of the 300,000 or 260, if you got 500,000, and at that time when council's deliberating, you'd have some more opportunities. But I think it's reasonable to keep it between like the 2% and 3% and just plan accordingly, just based on what's been received.
All right. Thank you, Ben.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I was just curious about the increase in the WorkSafe BC premiums. Is that a change that WorkSafe has made, or have we had a rash of claims?
That's a good question. I asked the same thing, and I think it's a change from WorkSafe BC. We've had only minor claims. We haven't had anything significant that would have paid staff more than like a few weeks or a month. So I'm gonna ask WorkSafe BC more directly, but I believe it's just like across the board, these rates went up for everybody, and it's not specific to Sooke.
100% increase. Nice.
Anything else, Councillor Lajeunesse?
No, that's good for now. Thanks.
Anyone else have questions? I have a few, just scanning. Nope. Okay. Could you remind me on what our gas tax, what we receive for the Community Works or gas tax fund at the moment?
Sure. Just gonna skip to the,
Is it coming? If it's coming up, then I'll wait.
I do have a slide for
Okay,
it. Yeah, we're
that's fine.
gonna talk and look at each of the reserve values, and also I'll like, there's a slide about the different transfers to reserve.
Okay, no, I'll wait for that.
Okay.
In terms of the RCMP expenditures, would that then include the notorious 911 ECOM outcome?
That's in here as well. I'm gonna get to that. That's added for 2025. So
Okay.
I believe the cost is 340,000. And that it also explains why we have a larger tax increase for 2025. It's to fund the ECOM. And we've left that some of the reserve funding from the police reserve to offset 125,000
Okay,
for 2025. And then after that, we kind of cut the reserve off and go to taxes for 2027
I see.
or
Okay,
2026, sorry. But 2025, that cost comes on.
okay. And then in terms of others, like there was the retro pay for unionization and the like, so that is all in this year's, we're absorbing that now.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, as well as the things like the decisions around body worn cameras and software, it's sort of bounced from the federal to pay, the province to pay, and then they both determined that local governments would pay, so I'm just looking, is there any more outstanding pieces that we need to absorb? It is just be follow-up on advocacy.
There may be more requested from our RCMP in addition to just the contract costs today.
That's fine,
it's-
like when our local detachment approaches us and we deliberate it, it's fine, but it's just when other pieces happen outside of the long-term agreement that flare up to us, that's where I'm curious about that. The other one would be, will we see in an upcoming slide, I'm curious about the breakdown for property taxes. So residential is this much and the percentage to commercial and industrial, is that coming up?
I don't have the difference between the tax classes. I could do that for the next slide. It's a little preemptive. Before we, like, that would come up normally when we start talking about the tax rate, but
Okay.
I could do a hypothetical if this was approved and how it's spread, if you'd like to see that for the next meeting.
Yeah, and maybe if staff can provide me with what it was last year, say, because I have a media interview tomorrow morning, so it would just be helpful to remind myself what that is.
Sure, yeah, I
Okay.
have it right on my desktop.
Yeah, knowing that
Okay.
this year it'll come. And the other one is the community service agreements. That seems low to me, like, isn't it much higher?
Okay, so this is just an increase to, we did a CPI increase for each of them.
Okay,
And then, so that includes the CPI lift on each of the agreements. And then also, you'll see in the book, we added the Lions funding, because the Lions funding, although approved and paid, we missed the budget for it in 2023. So we've added that back. So it includes there. They were still funded and approved through council resolution. However, they weren't on the budget line yet.
right, okay, so this is just the change. It's not
That's
new.
right.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. Anything else from, okay, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, on the subject of those community service agreements, we just bumped up the Souk Family Resource Society to 45,000. And I don't think you caught that.
That's correct. It's not reflected yet, but it will be included for the final.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe that's it for now. Thank
Okay.
you.
So moving into this next slide here. So these are the discretionary expenses in the budget. So these are essentially, they're deemed to be essential for operations, but they're not mandatory. So this is like, these are they've been deemed as essential, but they're not mandatory and could be removed if if requested, I guess. This is, so I'll start from the top, the transfer to the asset management program. This is a 218,000, is 2%. The auxiliary bylaw officer, 42,000, the firefighter for the June start, which would have been anticipated for a 2025 start. This provides, like, I'll let the fire department go into the details as to why at the service level requests, they have some pretty good reasoning to hire this person for some coverage this summer. The 2024 QP CPI adjustment. So this is an adjustment to the CPI for the QP staff that is not currently in the contract. So this is not a it's not a contract obligation. This is just kind of to follow suit with some other municipalities. Our QP staff received a 2% lift for 2024, and when the inflation has been much higher than that. So this would just catch them up and also catch us up to be in line with other municipalities, so we don't fall behind and we can remain competitive with attracting staff. The admin operation adjustments totaling 57,000. So that includes, so say for instance, it includes some professional development for the economic development officer, a couple of adjustments for the parks budget, fire operations adjustments for 42,000. Again, similar to, these are just operational adjustments for, to bring the costs in line, the expenses in line with the actual costs. And then the parks, the $68,000 is for operating adjustments for irrigation, water, hydro, security, and janitorial. These are Again, these are essential, but again, it's not mandatory, so that's why we've deemed them as discretionary expenses. So those changes mentioned equal the, sorry, say that again. The changes equal to the 13.31% increase to the general municipal taxation for property owners for the district of Sauk. So overall, this is an increase of 1,451,000. And what this means for the average household is this will cost $15.43 per month, or $185 per year. Well, such an increase is not recommended lightly and provides the starting point for council's upcoming service level deliberations, reflecting on what $15 a month buys today is considered on this slide here. So just some historical context. Sauk has historically had low taxes, and to meet the needs of our community for today and into the future, an investment is required. So I just want to take a look at the zeros and the close to zero tax increases Sauk has received over the last dozen years. It's important to note that like the 0% tax increases in those years, any growth or non-market change that would have happened essentially would have been absorbed into the budget, and therefore decreasing most of the tax base's taxes. So I'd tested a couple of properties of just some staff who lived in Sauk for a while, and I asked them, like, can you tell me what your taxes were in these years? And each of the years we had zeros, they had decreases to their taxes. So each of those years you did zero, or the council at the time did zero, essentially you gave a break to citizens. So when you measure like tax increases versus CPI, it's apples and oranges, but also like that amount that's been decreased is not included. So those few years from 2012 to 2015, they stayed pretty low. And at the same time, Sauk was growing, staff was growing, and RCMP was growing. And each of those years, essentially, you're just doing an exercise to trim any room in the budget to keep going. So it's really difficult. I've been in a municipality when they've done close to zero, and it's a tough task. And seeing this many zeros is it's quite a feat for Sauk to like be still going and had seen so many zero increases. So just to show some context here, that the 13.31% would be the largest increase that I could see that Sauk has had, but I think it's justified. These next few slides are going to kind of show the basis for that. So this chart here is the per capita tax comparison. This is a sample of all the municipalities between a population of 10,000 and 20,000 in BC. Sauk is the lowest per capita of taxes collected when comparing all of them. The same results when we compared Sauk to all the Vancouver Island municipalities as well. We had the lowest taxes per capita, and that's included in the book here. But for this PowerPoint, I took the population sample. It's important to note that it's not comparing apples to apples, because some municipalities may have recreation, some may not have fire, some may have public works. So it's different, but also some of these populations that have a population under 15,000, they don't pay 90% of RCMP. So like some of them, and they all pay more taxes than we do. However, we're still the lowest, and we're trying to do less with more. More with less. So, thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, another way to look at that. So that was per capita. This is taxes on a representative house. So same sample of municipalities between over 10,000 under 20,000. And you're going to see that Sauk is the lowest. So if the increase today was approved, and it's roughly just over $180 a house, so it's going to nudge us a couple dollars more than North Saanich, which is a second to us, but we're going to assume they're going to increase more than a couple dollars this year. So with this increase, I'm going to say we'll still be the lowest. of municipality in this sample of municipalities for general municipal taxes collected. So Sioux could still keep that title of being the lowest taxes collected for general municipal purposes. So a couple of other stats, with the lowest of the representative house, we have the fifth lowest of total municipal taxes collected. So that includes like all of the other charges from the other jurisdictions. We're the seventh lowest in business property class taxes collected, and we're the eighth lowest of percentage of business taxes to total taxes collected at 14%. We're the fifth lowest of percentage of business assessment to total assessment values at 4%. So 4% of business assessment to total assessment values. So 4% of our assessment is business. So
Just a
this,
question
Could you
here.
repeat that? I kind of lost you there.
sure. Just the last one, 4% of our assessment is business, is representative of business class. So seventh, sorry, I'm going to read that one more time. The seventh lowest total business property class municipal taxes collected, and then the eighth lowest percentage of business taxes to total taxes collected at 14%. I could send you some of those numbers. I actually have a little report on that. Like, okay,
So Counselor Bateman just said that it would be nice to see a page added on that. To Counselor Lajeunesse and others viewing.
okay. So now we're looking at the consolidated budget. So this is essentially the 5-year consolidated budget, operating budget. The 2024 budget includes an approximate increase of 308,000 from different revenue streams. Sorry, just to back up a minute, this is just on the revenue side. So how this works is this revenue, the total amount 42 million would balance to the expenses. The top part is operating revenue, and then the transfer between the funds is essentially reserves that would fund a portion of operations and then also capital. So the transfer from reserves for the 245,000 includes a transfer from the capital replacement reserve, which funds the debt for some of our fire trucks. So that is the only, and without the COVID reserve and the police reserve, that's the only other reserve that's funding operations is that 245,000. And that's been consistently funding a portion of debt for our fire trucks and some equipment. Just to note, the 1% utility tax is on here. So you'll see it here as the 310,000. That includes grant in lieu of taxes. Also, it includes the 1% from our utility companies, which I just mentioned. Again, it's decreased from 185,000 to 178. So the revenue is going down. We receive an additional 49,000 from Fortis, and we have for a few years now. And this is an operating agreement based on 3% of their revenues. And essentially how this works is that the municipal operating fee is a levy that Fortis BC collects on behalf of municipalities. This fee gets passed on to the district. It appears as a monthly fee on different on the people's charges and excludes taxes. So that's actually, it's unique to Sioux because I've not seen this 3% fee before, but it does help because the 1% utility from Fortis doesn't go very far.
Sorry, the 1% from,
So this is separate from the 1%. We receive a 1% of revenue from Fortis, TELUS, Shaw, and Hydro. And then in addition to that 1%, we receive 3% from Fortis. And there's a special agreement that Fortis pays us, and they have a surcharge on their essentially on their bills that comes back to us. So it's roughly $49,000 that we receive on this 3% of the revenues.
so just for the utilities, just a follow-up question there. So Fortis, TELUS, Hydro and Shaw. So is that TELUS Mobility or just TELUS Communications like landline phones?
It's TELUS landlines and TV subscriptions.
So landlines and TV.
We
And
do-
then for Shaw, which I guess is Rogers now, is it the same thing? It's the
Same thing, TV subscriptions
TV
for Shaw.
subscription.
So what's not included on the legislation is we don't receive any portion of the revenue from internet or cell.
Nothing for
cellular
internet and
service.
mobility.
Yeah,
Okay.
which are the two ones that are growing.
Well, that's where the shift is.
Yeah,
I would be curious to know how many people, many no longer have TV subscriptions and are shifting to internet streaming and the like instead. So, okay. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
This isn't the first time that Mr. Curry's brought this forward to council. I know that we've missed the window of opportunity for ABICC, but I think that'd be appropriate to do some advocacy work around this at UBCM. And I'd like to work on a resolution to that effect. Maybe with Mr. Curry, if that were possible, to do some of the legwork on the research and so on and so forth.
Yeah, what I would recommend that you do is just scan the UBCM resolution database first and then build on what is there so that we're not writing what's already there. It's adding the strength in the whereas clause and pushing it that way. Yeah. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, in fact, I dug up Mr. Curry's emails from earlier this year and last year and did research that UBCM database. Nothing has been done to date, but I started drafting a resolution. So I'll hand that over to you and you carry on with Mr. Curry.
There we go.
And there is a late resolution deadline of April 10th for AVIC,
Oh,
incidentally.
very nice. Thank you.
But just remember to look at AVIC rules. Usually late resolution is to deal with something that's new and emergent. So this is
not new and emerging.
this is a longstanding problem, not necessarily a new initiative. So it'll be clear though, but there is time for the UBCM deadline.
okay, yeah, thank you. Into the next slide here. This here is the other side of the consolidated budget. So this is the 5-year outlook of the complete budget. And this is the expense side of it. So again, the bottom, the total expenses match the total revenues. The top part is the different categories of departments and their total expenses. You'll see capital expenses there across, and then that 18 million for each of the years that ties back to the 5-year capital plan that's included with the budget book. The debt here, so you'll see the debt interest in principal. This includes for 2024, 2025, and 2026. This is debt for some of our fire equipment. And also we have some sewer debt for the sewer parcel tax that's finishing. I believe the last year is 2026. And then in 2027, half the year we funded half of the debt, principal and interest for some bigger borrowing for a bigger roads project. And then in 2028, that debt is 100% on. I'll speak to that project a little bit later on. And then you see the transfer between funds. So the transfer to reserves, that 1.7 million for 2024 includes just the transfer of the revenue that we've received. So the revenue is reported above. So some of the grants like the gas tax grants and also the casino revenue would flow through that and transfer to the reserve. Transfer to asset management, you see that line there. That's 218,000. So adding 2% to each year, you can see in 2028 that gets to be 1.3 million, which gives us some more room to be able to replace and maintain existing infrastructure. You'll see that kind of funnel through the capital plan as well as being just a piece for us to be able to get stuff done. You'll see in some future years where we're able to use that fund to for maintenance and replacement of current stuff, current capital. And again, you see the amortization offset, which you'll see on both ends as well. So the proposed general municipal tax increases for 2024 to 2028. So this is that 5-year consolidated plan translates to these tax increases. So the 13.31 for 2024 The 8.79% for 2025 includes the e-com expenses of 340,000. That's why it's a little bit bigger of a jump for next year. And then we get into some more stable increases around the 5 to 6% mark for 2026 and 2027 and 2028. Just to note, again, the Phillips Road Connector borrowing costs are added in 2027 for the half of the year and in 2028 for the full year. I have a couple more slides to talk a bit about that borrowing later on. So
Oh, sorry, Mr. Curry, Councillor Bateman has a question.
I just have a comment on these 5-year budgeted projections. I look back at last year's 5-year projections, and this year we were to see a 5.20% increase, followed by 6, 5.3, 4.85. So just as a message to the public, these projections are really, really loose. Would you, is that accurate? Or, I mean, things happen and hence.
They can be, I think what we would like to have the goal of getting to like a bigger 10-year plan where where everything isn't so loose. So and getting there with having the adequate asset management program in place and having these funds so that we aren't having to ask for it again, or just asking to like piecemeal the capital replacement every year. We can get to a point where it is more stable, and then we're only fluctuating slightly. So in those increases, I should have mentioned, like I built in some extra staff resources. So you'll see, I typically will put those in into Rachel's finance budget. So they're not as though we're increasing the finance department, but they're just a placeholder for the organization. So I believe I had 2 in 2025 and 2 in 2026, just because we know we need more staff resources in the organization. So these can be more consistent, but again, it's always going to be, we're looking at the year ahead of us, whatever the non-market changes received, and also grant funding for any special projects that you want to do. So I think our goal is to get these to be more consistent so that we're only changing it a few digits and not from 5 to 10 or to 15 or 13. So the next few slides is going to be the 2024 capital project listing. I'm gonna I'll pull out a couple to talk about, and but I'm gonna move pretty quick through capital because we will have each of the department heads to present and talk about specifically what they're doing with capital. Just to kind of mention what's said on this slide here, like the 5-year plan provides us the framework for long-term planning. I think it sets us up to do some further planning to go, hopefully with the goal of having a 10-year capital plan. And through that, we need to ask council and what do we need, why do we need it, and how are we going to pay for it, and how much will it cost to operate and maintain. And the last piece is the most important, because that comes back to the asset management program where what's it going to cost to operate, maintain, and eventually replace. So it's nice that we add all kinds of things, whether it's park infrastructure, road infrastructure, or we're adding all these development contributions, but at the same time, we need the resources to be able to maintain them. The 2024 capital plan. So this is just a quick glimpse at what is included in capital. The Lot A community project, we weren't sure where to put this, so I put it under council. This number can be fluid. It's $1,023,000. This is the remainder of the COVID restart fund. So we just put whatever was left in that fund here. So depending on what happens with this project, this amount at the direction of council can be changed. In here, some bigger components. We have a City Hall EV vehicle. This is carried forward from last year. We paused on this purchase in 2023 just based on missing a few building inspectors. Like we had a lot full of cars, so we actually paused on 2 of the fleet purchases. One we pushed to next year, and then the one we're going to try to purchase a EV vehicle for the office for this year. And then the $10,000 is the electrical upgrades, which we'd have to do to be able to charge it in the back lot. The Charters Road corridor north, this is the 2/3 of the project funding. A third of the project is in 2025. This gets the construction going for this year for the anticipated costs that we think there will be. The Church Road roundabout, this is the remainder of the funding to finish the project this year. The Demmanuel Creek crossing, this is again 2/3 of the total cost of the project. The third of the project is in 2025. And the Sport Box carryover for $1 million. This was a carry forward project for the phase 2 of the remainder of the work at Ravens Ridge Park. This includes a portion of the grant that is still funding the landscaping of the park. Sewer capital is pretty standard. The continuation of the expansion project and then the Force Main project as well. I'll leave that to the operator to speak more to it when at the service levels meeting. Capital funding proposed. So we're using 3.4 million of the Growing BC reserve. 3.1 million of this is through grants. And then you have 2.5 and 2.1 through DCC charges. And we're using 1.3 million of gas taxes, 1.3 million of the COVID reserve. You can see where most of these funds are kind of being I have a schedule coming up where you can see we're almost depleting some of these funds to do some of this work, but we have a couple of really big capital years between 2024 and 2025, which is accomplishing a lot of work in Sooke. So just going to talk about the reserve fund contributions. So this is money going back into the reserve, 24,000 for the Sooke Program of the Arts, the SPA reserve. This is 3% of building fees. 20,000 for the capital works. This is per a bylaw. 15,000 for the capital asset replacement reserve. So just to pause there, we do want to bring back a report that consolidates some of our reserve bylaws. Right now, we're obligated to make these little transfers, but we would like to consolidate these reserves into more of one bylaw, so we're not doing these little things and it just more becomes a part of the asset program, the asset replacement program. 394,000 for the capital asset replacement reserve. So this is increased by the 218,000 proposed today. So there is currently 176,000 that has been allocated for the capital assets that's been previously budgeted for. So that amount essentially covers the cost of the borrowing for the fire trucks that we're on. So it's a little bit less than that, than the amount for the cost of borrowing, but it's pretty close to it. So this 218,000 bump for the 2% brings us to 394,000 going into the reserve for capital asset replacement. $260,000 from the casino reserve. Casino revenue is still below 2019 levels. We haven't seen it bounce back yet. We're hoping that maybe things will change, or maybe this is just the new normal with people doing more online gambling and not going into the actual facility any longer. 85,000 for the future police reserve. Again, this number is usually going to be based on what the actual surplus is. And then 57,000 for the community building fund. So to answer your question earlier, that's the amount we receive for gas taxes currently. So just to note that is now being negotiated and may change hopefully in the near future, and we'll figure out what the Sooke will receive, and hopefully it's more than that. Okay, here's the reserve fund contribution schedule. So this shows just money coming into the reserves, starting with the opening balance, money going in, and then money coming out for capital funding, just to give an idea of where we land at the end of the year. I think the best way to look at this is if you are looking through the 5-year capital plan in the book and look through 2024 to 2025, because some of the projects are in both years, so that the ending balances at the end of 2025 reflect more where your reserve levels are going to be after some of the major capital that's happening in 2024. You can see here the COVID restart reserve estimated ending balance is now 0 based on us utilizing the 1.5 million in 2024. Gas tax reserve goes to 31,000 at the end of 2024, based on the the funding for the projects in 2024. Sewer fund reserve still stays stable at close to $1 million left at the end of the year. The future road liabilities reserve, that has an ability to be applied to some road projects and could potentially be used as a contingency for the Church Road or the Charters Road project if there's any unforeseen costs in the work. The snow removal reserve, again, is applied when we have any snow removal costs that are higher than what's budgeted. We'll apply that to operating just to offset the impact. You see here the capital improvement financing reserve at the very top of the page. It's 146,000 at the end of the year. This is one of those small reserves that we would like to review and hopefully consolidate. So there's a few different ones. I've done some searches and seen there has been some other reports that have come forward to council about potentially consolidating this revenue smoothing reserve. And then there's another property tax stabilization reserve, and they both have the similar purpose, but they each have their own guiding bylaws. So I think we just need to do a bit of work to like make this list a little bit shorter and also give us more options to use some of these funds. Just want to pause here and see if there's any questions about the reserve contributions or any capital funding questions.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm just curious, given that we haven't actually done a strat plan and council may actually have some projects that might require money, where would that fit in?
Well, I think given the direction, we'll figure it out. A lot of it right now, as you go through the book, and if you see anything that ends up on the very far right for funding, whether it's from grant or from borrowing, that's like we would really like to do this in this year. However, there's no money, and we're gonna I guess hope that something comes along. So like that's where a lot of the projects go, that it's a placeholder. We're anticipating doing it, and sometime in these 5 years, if some funding becomes available. So there's potential. There isn't a lot of room to do anything extra, but there's potential to move things forward or backwards depending on what your priorities are. So there is some room. I know when some of the projects are committed and we're under contract to start them, but there is some that are they're in the plan. So
Follow up and then I'll go to Ms. Gray.
Actually, it's not directly to this, so it's not a follow, it's a different question.
Okay,
Through your resort, just wanted to add, to elaborate on Ben's point a little bit further is if further priorities or directions, from council come after strategic planning is completed, after the financial plan and the tax rates have been adopted, you can't change the bottom number in the whole, in the tax, and the financial plan bylaw, but we can move amounts within that. So a financial plan amendment could be done, like if it's a big ticket priority project, that has happened in prior years past, where we will go through an official financial plan, depending on the value, of course. If it necessitates, if it's a material adjustment, we can do a financial plan amendment that will move and reprioritize a certain project from one year and move that funding to do another initiative. So there's multiple avenues depending on the value of the project and the timing of when this project will be complete, of what would make sense of how to fund it.
Thank you. Okay, so my other question was, given that inflation is what, 3.7%, I think was mentioned, and we're looking at a 2% for asset management. And we have what exact percentage for the non-discretionary, was it?
I guess it's hard to apply the percentage to it because there's the revenue offsets. So it depends on where you want to apply those revenue offsets to first. However, if I remove the asset management piece, I think I have it on my screen here.
I think I understand what you're saying in terms of,
It's
where the money comes from changes.
That's right. So if there's close to, I guess, between the non-market growth, the COVID, like there's just over $1 million in revenue offsets. In in the budget, and then there's roughly like $2.5 million in adjustments to expenses. So it's like, how do you apply that? So, but if you removed, say, the asset management piece, and I could tell you exactly what that number would be to reduce the tax increase.
Okay, that would be interesting to know, because what I was noticing was that you have a section here where it's the 13.31% increase is due to improvements on community safety, 2% for asset management, and non-discretionary inflationary contractual wage increases. So what that says to me is that the majority of our increase is actually based on inflation, asset management, stuff that we can't change, and community safety. Is that? And I would love to know what the actual breakdown would be on those percentages. Not that it seems like we necessarily have a lot of flex, but I'm just curious.
Absolutely. I could bring that back for the service level review.
Thank you.
Meeting. Sure.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how do you, can you tell me how much is sitting in the parks reserves? And if those funds can be used for parks acquisition, and or if we were to borrow money for parks land acquisition, would we be able to use those funds to make payments on that borrowed money?
I could speak to what's in the fund. I'd have to double check for the use of the specific use of the funds. There is 300,000 here in the fund, 304,000, and then you also have there is the playing field reserve, which is for specific to Sun River as well. And then but I could look up what the use of the funds are and get back to you.
Okay, and we have, I think we initiated a parks DCCs last year, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
The DCCs for parks, just on my last slide here at the bottom there, I just have the DCC fund amounts. Oh, right there, yeah, Ryan's on it. So you see the park balance there, it was 158,000. And then projecting to be 243,000 in 2024. However, there is some projects already scheduled to be funded from DCCs in 2024.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Pearson, did I miss? No? Okay. I had one question, and it sort of relates to the capital. I'm going to put it there and then just let me know where it might land. We received a letter from the Sioux Community Association earlier this year that I know council received at an open meeting in January, I believe. I followed up with the Sioux Community Association, and it's related to replacement lights for Fred Milne Park. So what they have learned is that the lights that are currently there are obsolete. So the bulbs one by one are burning out and are not replaceable. And that also and it's all in the letter that you've received, obviously, is the stability of these lights. And so the challenge that we have is that when soccer season is on, it's in the wintertime and the lights are critical. So I'm not asking today that we find the money, but I do feel we need to find the money through this year's budget process. Where it would come from, would it be part of a transfer out of a reserve? Could we access the COVID relief funding for that? I believe we can under the criteria and the movement to return to play. Is there another method there? And then in my discussions as well, there is a desire that we work more formally together. So over the course of the year, establishing what does a new service agreement look like? What kind of an MOU could we set up going forward? Because while this is not a District of Sioux owned asset, it is a community asset. And we need to work together. I don't believe in acquiring the land and taking it in because this is a volunteer run organization. And either for us to suddenly do this work is a whole other set of servicing that would need to acquire. And similarly with Sea Park, they're at capacity with what they're already managing. And so I'm just sharing that. As you all know, it came before council and there was an ask. So we need to process it now through the budget deliberations. Councillor McMath?
So Sioux Community Association, is that a not-for-profit?
Yeah, I believe it's a society, yeah.
And so are the lands privately owned?
No, it's owned by the society still. It's in their name.
Okay, so have they applied for grants?
Yeah, they receive funding from us like through the community grant process and then also permissive tax exemptions. So all of their properties are exempt and they don't pay taxes. So they through that, they would have to be a society for the purpose of receiving the permissive exemption.
So when the turf was installed and they wanted to apply, you have to refresh my memory, we had to pay out of the gas tax reserve for that because they didn't qualify for funding, correct?
There was a challenge back in the day, so the District of Sioux transferred the around 700,000 out of our Community Works Fund. It was the gas tax Councillor Pearson may receive. The Sun River Sports Field funding is not an eligible source because it's tied to the parcel in Sun River specifically. Councillor Bateman?
Well, it's funny because that fund is down to $100,000. So I thought.
The Sun River Fund has, because it went in, the portions that were sitting there were used for a contribution towards the Ravens Ridge Sport Box, which is now constructed. But it's on that parcel of land and although the funds used may be there specifically.
Okay, yeah, I think I guess it could come up through the deliberations and we could be requested to bring it back with to be included in the final budget.
Okay, it's just
Yeah.
where it'll land. You know, I don't want to make a motion. I mean, I could, but it's something, and then I think obviously there's further conversations with the group, you know, attaining procurement practices on best pricing and all of that. But it's just, this is the time to launch this now. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I could just add, and like, we can definitely make note of that, and that's something like, depending on the timing of these negotiations and what council would, you know, if council supports something like that, that's something we could do with a financial plan amendment, depending on the timing of if this was been adopted. The bottom line wouldn't change. We would just repurpose current funding, whether that would be COVID or potentially the Community Works Fund. If we got confirmation on that funding doubled potentially, of course, that would be a great bonus for us, and potentially some of that funding could be accessed again. So yeah, there's definitely ways we could figure that out for sure.
Okay, Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I guess it's just very much like Councillor St. Pierre and the strategic plan. If something comes up, then we just have to do, you know, sort of rob Peter to pay Paul. And it depends on what our priority is, but something will have to slide sooner or later because the 13.3 is pretty solid right at the moment until we can figure some ways. So I guess you're on notice that there could be something else coming down the line. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So just finishing up with this slide here, the bottom part, these aren't reserves, but they're considered, it's the development cost charges, so it's considered deferred revenue. We don't recognize this as a reserve, but it's recognized as revenue when we receive it. So then it goes into these accounts there and considered deferred revenue. So the development cost charges for sewer, roads, and parks. There is also a drainage one, but it had very little amount funds in it, so I didn't include it. But you could see it have some pretty modest forecast for the amounts received for 2024, just based on we didn't receive what was budgeted for 2023. But I do believe just with some of the development that could potentially be coming down the pipe that we may receive more than this. So the 5-year plan, which includes funding from DCCs is conservative. And we will have more options to move some projects up dependent on when we receive DCC. So as you kind of flow through the 5-year plan, you'll see that like the DCCs in some years go like we're using the DCC funds received in that year to complete projects, or you'll see a project that's been pushed out a couple of years because we're waiting on receiving more DCCs.
Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Just a question, with the new category of the provincial legislation, ACCs, the new category, is that going to be included 2025, or is there some discussion now?
There isn't discussion yet, but it would be included and you'd receive it. It would be through our financial statements. You would receive reports for it, and then also in the budget process too. So it's not there yet.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I was at the Housing Summit when they discussed ACCs, and I can provide a little bit of more information on that. They're actually very similar to DCCs in that you actually have to have specific projects costed out well ahead of time, decided on, and then it goes through a very similar process. So it's actually as onerous as DCCs to try and figure out. We have to know exactly where we're spending the money, what it's going to look like, and so on and so forth. So I'm guessing it's going to take a while, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can just add a bit more context, is that is one of the projects staff would be looking at. It was originally going to be a different kind of contribution, but then the ACC announcement came out. So the contract we have with Urban System has a little piece of money dedicated to a different amenity contribution, which is now we're in the process of discussing that, analyzing what the province is saying we're allowed to use the funds for, and we'll pivot and throughout the year bring information forward to council with what this could potentially look like, and community engagement and stakeholder engagement obviously would have to happen with all of those things. And so definitely 2025 would feel realistic.
Yeah, I was more curious, like I kind of got the concept of what it is. It's just where will it show in debt management, or I'm not sure.
Great. Yeah. So it's not in there for this draft, excuse me, of the financial plan, but it would be in 2025 to 2029 for sure.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so just on the DCC subject, so on Monday night, I believe we approved 35% increase across all categories. That wouldn't show up this year because these are in-stream projects.
No, just to confirm, what we improved was that they're going to launch the community consultation piece
sorry,
and the
you're right. We
stakeholder
didn't approve
piece.
it.
So that'll return, and then likely for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. The report on Monday was just the introduction to a potential increase. There'll be a 1-year grace period for anyone within STREEP applications, inspector approval. Yeah, it's a little ways out for that impact to be shown and budgeted for.
Okay, this next slide here, this is our debt. This is our debt schedule. And this includes like our 5-year plan and for our principal and interest payments for our debt. You can see that the top portion includes this our borrowing for different fire equipment. And then moving through to the bottom there is the borrowing for the sewer, which then finishes at the end of 2026. Gives us a bit of room to make some big contributions to the reserves in those years. Because right now that debt would have been supported from sewer parcel fees. So then that frees up some more money for whether for sewer asset replacement and maintenance. Another important item on here is the roads project. So this second to last on the list there for the 212,000 and 215,000 for principal and interest on borrowing for the Phillips Road connector or the Throop Road connector for the phase of the transportation master plan. And that's half funded for 2027 and then fully funded for 2028. We have the fire pumper truck it's going to be finished by the end of 2024, near the end of 2024. I'm just going to carry the financing in-house for the end of the year, and then we'll have those debt payments come on for 2025. And just going to the next slide here, I just wanted to show council this hypothetical. If we were asked to complete and borrow for the Throop Road connector project, Phillips to Charters today. So this is, it's estimated that if you were to do all the work today, it could cost approximately $30 million. The cost to borrow $30 million at today's MFA rate would cost the average homeowner $262 per year or $21.86 per month. So you can see the cost of borrowing for principal and interest is just over $2 million a year. So I just want to show, and that's at the interest rate of 4.97%. I just want to show the next slide here. This is what that same borrowing would cost when interest rates are low. So back in 2020, MFA offered interest rates that were 0.91 on a 30-year loan. So it's like strike when the interest rate is that good. So you could see cost of borrowing is $835,000. The cost this would cost a taxpayer an average of $9.10 per month or $109 per year. This translates to a 7.63% tax increase. So that this is the debt that's been added and included in the 5-year financial plan is based on us borrowing 22.7 million, and that's just for the portion of the Throop Road Connector and the Phillips Road corridor. So it's in the long-term financial plan. It is set up for borrowing, so it is in there and it's included in those tax increases. But if you asked us to move it into a year sooner, it would just move those tax increases up. So just for reference, that to keep an eye out on what the interest rates are doing if you are considering a large borrowing project.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Quite frankly, council is not generally going to be cognizant of these realities, when they come up. Do we have a mechanism in place for major projects to come forward if they're shovel ready, to borrow the money immediately and to make a proposal to council? Because that's more to the point. If council has to bring these things up, we're not going to say doomed, but it might not happen in a timely manner. So curious on that one. If the interest rate were to drop to, say 2% or 1.5, 6 months, a year from now, can we expect a report from staff saying these are the projects that we should greenlight right now to take advantage of this?
I can speak to that maybe a little bit. I could see, staff can make recommendations to council. As for borrowing that much, we would have to go to the community, right? There's either the referendum or alternative approval process, but yes, that's, if interest rates start dropping, that is something staff could, and or the community could say that they're ready for, but then there would be a massive public process to that borrowing. So it wouldn't be immediate, but it would be something for sure that staff could present options to council on.
I think it's reasonable to say that anyone sitting here would be aware of interest rates.
Aware of interest rates, but not necessarily aware of all the projects in the queue, not necessarily always completely aware of which projects are dying to happen and might become truly viable because of a shift in interest rates. I wouldn't have that at my fingertips. And I know our staff does, but our staff generally needs direction from council to bring that information forward. So I'm concerned that it wouldn't necessarily come forward in a timely manner.
An example, though, would be the work that was done for Church and Otter Point Road, in where our staff became aware of fully funded grant opportunities and projects that were eligible and brought them forward. And as a result, we received those grants and were able to complete the work. So I'm just showing that has been proven out already. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, we're also going to do a 5-year plan, a strategic plan again. And I'm sure out of that, we're going to indicate what our priorities are. Like for me, the Throop Road extension is a priority. Now, I mean, we can't capitalize on it today with the interest rates, but that would be a trigger, I assume, to staff. If that's a priority of ours and something can happen on it, then we make it happen.
Yeah, maybe one important point to add too is having that project and kind of showing how we were potentially funding it helps us for grants as well. Like most of these projects, you have to show that you're committed or, there is a plan to somehow do this project. So normally almost with every grant, we have to submit our 5-year financial plan and highlight where these projects are included and how we're planning on funding them. So that's partly, that's definitely why we've got this included in our project. And Mr. Curry was just showing some samples of how dramatically different the borrowing is between, a few percent in interest rates. For a loan that significant, it's going to make a material difference in the annual payments.
Okay, thank you. On to the next slide here. This is my conclusion
It's
today.
skipped to, oh, you're on the conclusion slide?
I'm on
Okay.
the conclusion, yeah. So that was just, those slides were an example as a talking point more. If it comes up and and so that you are aware too, if you're asked about why are we moving forward with this, or why can we not afford to do it? Because it's well, one, we don't have the funds in the bank, and two, the cost to borrow it would be a 7 or 8% tax increase. And when we're already trying to get that just to maintain operations. So in conclusion, the draft 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the District of Sault represents a comprehensive and responsive approach to managing municipal resources while addressing the evolving needs and priorities of our community. Through careful consideration of resident input, historical financial data, and future projections, this plan looks to balance fiscal responsibility and strategic investment in asset management. The prioritization of key areas such as traffic planning, emergency response, and park investments reflects our commitment to enhancing the quality of life for all residents. As we move forward with the implementation of this plan, we remain dedicated to transparent communication, accountability, and ongoing dialogue with the community to ensure that Sault continues to thrive and prosper for years to come. That concludes my presentation. What we have next coming is the service level reviews, as mentioned a few times today. Once we receive direction from council to update the draft financial plan and subsequently present a revised plan for readings at the public meetings, and then the community budget open house following, and then budget adoption. Is there any further questions? Thank you.
The question I have, I just wanted to close the loop with the Sault Community Association. Do you require a motion at this time for that to be considered and brought back to council, or what would work there?
Just so to clarify, like you would like us to include specific line in the budget for that, or?
Following up on the ask in the letter and as well as my meeting. So to elaborate a bit further, they're in the process of establishing an asset management plan for all the various resources that they have, and also on what replacement of these assets look like over the time. So that's not just the lights, there's other pieces that are coming. And then the intention would be that all the various user groups would work directly with the Sault Community Association and not approach the district separately, as has been the case, whether it's with ball or pickleball or whatever. It all would flow through a unit, through a different way. So in this case, the community service agreement that we have would need to be revised, and likely an MOU document would need to be sorted on having those exchanges. Like in some cases with Sea Park, our recreational partner, there's an established commission that operates in a certain way with representatives of the district on it, and influencing those decisions. In this case, this one is a bit different. So I can, certainly draft a motion and see where council sits on this. So that MOU and a new service agreement would be something that would need to be worked out over the course of the year. But it seems to me by the letter and the conversation I have, they need to advance these lights this year. And so that's where they need to understand, they need to know what available options are. And if they're not successful with funding from the district or grants, there's a potential impact on all of the action that happens on the fields, which is probably close to 1,000 or so players. And what that is for families is a significant parcel.
So yeah, I think probably because this isn't in a bylaw yet, like it's still fluid, and we can adjust it. And that's something we can bring with the cap at the next meeting with kind of a refined report or summary on the capital projects with some options of where that funding could come from, and seek a direction from council at that time if that's something you want included in the budget. Would be my suggestion, is we could now that we know that if this is something you would like us to cost out and confirm funding sources for, we can bring a recommendation back at the service level meeting and seek council direction on if that's a specific change you would like made it in the budget. Because I would imagine there's going to be other minor changes as well made from the current iteration of the document, so we could address those all. Or as well, if you want to do a motion today, that's fine as well.
Okay, so I'll put a motion forward, and it would be that council directs staff to incorporate funding for the Sault Community Association into the 2024 financial plan. And just, yeah. That council directs staff to incorporate funding for the Sioux Community Association into the 2024 financial plan. So I'll move that. I don't need a seconder. Yeah, so we're in committee of the whole. It's weird when the chair does this, but anyway. Let me just speak, the intention there, if this passes, I would expect that staff will reach out and to the Sioux Community Association to get more information, and then we'll bring all of that back towards council. Question.
Given that the Sioux Community Association through the Service Agreement is already in the budget, it sounds like the motion isn't asking staff to do anything that isn't already done.
No, because the service agreement that we have is around 32,000, and it basically covers half the utility bills of the community
No, I
hall. So
absolutely-
this is outside of that.
I absolutely realize, but the motion itself doesn't actually address that. It just says, look at making sure they're incorporated into. the
Oh,
plan.
I
And
see.
they're already incorporated in the plan. They're already. in the plan.
Incorporate funding for the Sioux, I should add then. For lighting,
For lighting or
for
something.
lighting at Fred Milne Park.
Because otherwise
okay.
they could just put a check mark on it.
Is that a friendly amendment then?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so the amendment would be for lighting at, yeah, that was the intention. So I'm going to just deem that as part of the main motion, that council directs staff to incorporate funding for the Sioux Community Association for lighting at Fred Milne Park into the 2024 financial plan. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
I have one regular question and one technical question, if there's a difference. How much are they asking for specifically?
So they're getting more specific quotes and working on grant possibilities. They were looking, I'm looking at this letter, it's between 180,000 to 355,000. So I understand it's around 250,000.
So 2% on top of the 13.
But that's where I'm looking at, is what would qualify in terms of
Mhm.
COVID relief funding, other pieces, or the longer conversation is just like we have 2% for asset management. Does that then, do we look to increase this? Because this will not be the only amenity that's going to need improvement that we don't own. And what does that look like over time? So then is there the case where we're looking to add in percentage towards recreation in our community? And asking the community that, okay, we are now receiving this. And you know, I'll use similarly to the seniors, and that one's a bit easier. It was casino revenue was transferred into a reserve. A not-for-profit now comes to council and makes an approach to access that funding towards a particular project. I don't know how this will land. It's just the start of a conversation, a longer one that needs to come over time, and then establishing an agreement that is workable for all parties, the community association and the district over time, because of the many assets that they're looking after and stewarding in the community. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, good comments. Thank you. The, it points to the bigger picture of how much assets in our community, what are considered public assets being managed by another entity, and that relationship needs to be clarified, in my opinion, like, because there's going to be a lot, as you say, a lot of asset management that's going to come from those community assets. So my technical question is then, so your motion is to recommend to council at a regular meeting? Is that what I understand? Because we're in committee of the whole, are we going to break out of this and then, forward our recommendation to council for further?
Yes, like should it pass here, then you're right in terms of the catch there. It would be then that committee of the whole recommends to council to recommend to staff to do X. So it's
Yeah.
just backing out of this here.
Okay,
Okay, Councillor Beddoes and Bateman, or sorry, Beddoes, then Lajeunesse. Okay,
I guess to me, when we make a motion like this and we don't really know the dollar value, we got a hypothetical from 2 to 4, I don't know, somewhere around there. Is it not better at this time to let staff, right now it's very fluid. We've got a letter which gives a rough indication or a verbal. And maybe the community association a little farther along and give us some up-to-date figures because for budget planning, it's a guesstimate at best. And as Councillor Pearson said, a couple $100,000 is a 2% tax increase on the 13.3 that we got now, or 13.1. So I'm not comfortable with that right now. It's a little bit too, I would rather just not have a motion. I know a motion is made, but I'm speaking to it. And not have a motion and let staff do what staff does. They got an indication from council now. I don't think we have to put it in a motion form to look at that situation. And, I thank the mayor for bringing that up because it's something that could bite us in the ass in a few months down the road. But I would need some more information on exactly what we're asked to do. And again, we're talking about a community asset that's not really our asset. I'm still a little confused. I'd like staff to take it away and come back. They're doing a budget for us and to give us some options and details. They'll hopefully know more in a few days when you make some phone calls.
But that would be the intention, because right now the budget is as they've presented it. This is a new piece of work that we're asking staff to do. So that's why I don't know the amounts, and that's where our staff will take that away, reach out to the community association, get all those pieces, and then bring all that back. And so that's why there's no dollar amount in there.
We both want the same thing.
Yeah.
Just wondering if
It is, it's just with a resolution, then it's directing the work as opposed to a comment. So that's why it's in this form. Councillor Lajeunesse, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, just curious. Sorry, if the community association or anyone else has looked to the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport to see if there's any possible assistance there.
That'll be the follow-up pieces that'll come through this motion, is getting all of those and seeing what other partners are available. Sometimes when the District of Sioux contributes, it opens up matching opportunities elsewhere, but we needed to start with something.
Right, and would the community association qualify for those grants, I guess is the other question. Maybe.
And that's the question that they'll need to answer. And I think that has been a barrier in the past. I don't know. Well, I don't know. So that's, I can't answer that. I'm not on that board.
So we may have to apply on their behalf or something.
Sometimes we've done that in the past for other organizations, or we're like the financial hosts sometimes for charitable tax receipts and the like with other entities until they have that established.
Right, okay.
Sir St. Pierre?
So I think that we're in a situation where the community association has approached us with a request, and it behooves us to actually answer that request in a really good way. As Councilor Pearson has pointed out, this is not by any means the first such request. As you pointed out, there's a lot of assets to deal with. We're going to have to come up with some kind of a process and partnership with the district. I think it's a good time to start exploring those options. And I think what the mayor is asking is for staff not necessarily to have a 2% lift and pay for lighting, but to explore partnerships and options within what we can do to work with the community association to assist them with asset management. I think that's my sense. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to confirm that that's what staff can do with this particular resolution before we move forward. If that's how staff's going to take it, then I'm full support, but I want to know that for a fact.
Yeah, this does just say particularly, because I'm writing it, it's the case of writing and thinking at the same time. And the long, and I can add to it is again to, anyway, maybe just ask, like, the intention here is to start the conversation and what does that look like? And over the course of the next year, this is an immediate ask as I see it for this year, but the other pieces around a different service agreement and that the partnering and what that all looks like would be answered down the road this year. But is that the takeaway that you're receiving?
Yeah, correct. Like my understanding of this is there's short-term and medium-term projects involved with this resolution. The short term is to come up, provide council with more information on potential funding options for lighting for 2024. We can provide some historical context on the turf field, because I believe there must have been reports to council. This is before my time and Mr. Curry's time here. So we can refresh our memory on what happened there initially, if council was curious on the history there, and provide some short-term options for the immediate funding need. The midterm would be a more of a longer-term stable community, asset, and how, to Councillor Pearson's point of, this is more than just community association. There's a lot of land and a lot of other partnerships I think we need to explore in a bigger aspect.
Okay, just to follow up, so the resolution as worded will provide appropriate direction to staff to do that work, yes?
Yes, that's the way I understand it, yes.
Good. Sorry, just.
Councillor McMath? Microphone, please. The motion on the
We
screen.
have the motion on the screen.
It's a new motion. That's a new motion.
We have some new staff
Can
that
you-
are getting
you
used to
can't
the
type it on there.
technology, so I'll read it again. That council directs staff to incorporate funding for the Sioux Community Association for lighting at Fred Milne Park into the 2024 financial plan.
Just don't think it should go in the budget, because the only way going forward is, well, A, we don't have the numbers, and B, now that it's going to set an expectation for the Sioux Community Association. And then the only way, if we go through all of this, and now we're at 15% when we're supposed to be around 5%, according to our predictors last year. And then we're like, actually, we can't do that. So then we're going to take it away. So I just don't want them to feel that disappointment. I don't think the way that the motion is worded is the way to approach this. I think staff should go work with the Sioux Community Association, and they can make a presentation, and so can the community association to us, like other members and other groups. But to put it in the budget is just going to force us to take it out if we can't afford it.
Okay, so would you like to consider an amendment, or are you speaking against the motion?
I'm going to be against the motion. I don't think it's necessary. I think staff have direction from the conversation we've had today.
Seeing nods from Mr. Curry.
Well, that's because we put a motion forward. So it's here in front of us. We've received this letter. I wasn't at the meeting openly, and there's awareness around the problem that they're facing this year. So, yeah, what I am gonna do though, procedurally, is we have not had public input on this. So I'm going to just postpone this to following public input, because before we put any motion forward, we usually like to hear from the public. So the chair is a bit out of order, but none of you are calling me on it. So I'm trying to do this all at once here. Thank you. Sorry, did you want to?
No, I think if you're tabling that.
I'm gonna table it. Okay, so I'm just gonna move this motion to after public input for now, but it'll be resolved today. And so as chair, I'm doing that, and you can challenge me if you like. But otherwise, that's the procedure, right? So go ahead. Thank you.
And it's just a minor one here. It's not minor to the Amber Academy and Sioux Harmony project, but at our community grant meetings last spring, we did discuss, I believe, for those two organizations, line item funding under the council budget. So I'm just curious whether that was considered or forgotten, or perhaps it can be re-included as an option.
Yeah, to be honest, I guess forgotten, or the group didn't. I'll have to check if there's if it was part of the resolution. If it was, then I'll reach out and I can begin that process of adding them as a service agreement. That would come back in the next plan. But they I believe they have both hit the 3 years of funding. So I'm surprised we haven't heard from them yet, because typically the groups would reach out.
Follow, because I think that was likely a comment made at the community grant meeting. So I'd like to make a resolution So I'd like to move that the Amber Academy and the Sioux Harmony project be included as line items in the 2024 financial plan.
Okay, can you actually, I'm going to ask you as chair, so to email that to our staff. Mr. Curry, and also there has been a shift towards moving towards service agreements rather than just line items. So you don't require a seconder for your motion, but maybe just if you could look at adjusting the language for service agreement. And then let's hear from the public and then we'll bring those motions forward. Okay. Counselor St. Pierre?
I just have a kind of a big picture question in terms of the budget, and that's around the exemptions. So we know that we've given exemptions for some big affordable housing projects, and it's set a precedent for affordable housing projects to come and get exemptions. That's created a long-term problem because we need a lot more affordable housing, and if we give exemptions to all of them, we just won't have the resources unless we lean heavily on our remaining taxpayers, which is not really fair or appropriate. So I was curious if staff had been looking at strategies, or if we need to, or if they need direction from staff in terms of coming up with some sort of policy or best practices, or what we might do long-term to actually deal with this particular issue.
Yeah, it has come up in discussion, and we talked about this, I believe, when the permissive tax bylaws come up. I believe they're all up for renewal on this may be the last year for 2024, and then we'll have to review and accept applications for the following year for 2025, not for 2025 exemption, but for 2026 exemption. And we had discussed refreshing our permissive tax exemption policy, which would come back to council before that. So we wanted to add a provision to the policy which addresses how you would like us to deal with applications for social housing.
I'd like to follow up, I think. I think similar to Councillor Pearson's recent resolution around affordable housing, I would hope that we could actually have maybe some form of a template that would actually allow affordable housing projects to go forward and know what they're dealing with. So I don't want to make the same sort of affordable housing create the challenge that we've had in the past. So if staff could come forward with, something really substantive that would allow us to, first of all, make sure our budgets don't crash and we don't have to put all the weight on our other taxpayers, but also something that we can just use as a template as opposed to negotiating with each and every project that comes along.
So I think I'm mixing up where affordable housing and permissive exemption, like,
okay,
permissive exemption, yes, for us, and then affordable housing would be probably through the planning department.
Let me clarify that. I'm talking about the permissive tax exemption. I'm well aware that with a permissive tax exemption, we can, potentially have it scaled over time. We can have percentages increase. We can do a lot of different things. I'm assuming the staff's going to come forward maybe with best practices and options in terms of actually helping affordable projects along, but potentially also making sure that, again, our other taxpayers are not overly burdened. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a situation where staff is negotiating or where council has to negotiate with each different applicant on what that's going to look like. And that we can maybe provide some certainty to those applicants, to those people who are dealing with affordable housing projects. And what I'm suggesting is that we've had that same issue that Councillor Pearson was trying to address. Let's not go there again. Let's have something a little bit more firm.
Yes, we can do
Does that
that.
provide clarity?
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, just getting back to the sports field. If I remember right, an acceptable use of the ACC funding was for sports facilities, ice rinks and that sort of thing. So that could be an option in the future.
Okay, thank you. And then just as indicated by staff earlier, it'll take some time legislatively for that program to be set up. It goes through the same process of that of a DCC. So we're looking at perhaps 24 or 25 for that.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions from staff on the budget, not on the motions, but on the budget in particular? I'm just asking, Counselor, if there's anything before we move to public input, not on the motions, but on the budget. Go ahead, Counselor Beddoes.
I'm still a little confused because right now we're dealing with a 13 point something % increase. And if we, once those resolutions go through, well, then we're looking at a 15% until, well, you got to work it into the budget and everything else is the same unless staff changes things around. I know we're going to ask somewhere down the line, we're going to do that. But first of all, this is the overview of these are the things that we want. And then we're going to talk about the things that we can actually do. So right now, as I see it, is we've already sort of accepted this. Well, we haven't accepted it, but we accepted the numbers they've given us, a 13+ %. And now we're going to ask staff to throw in possibly another $200,000, which again goes back to Councillor McMath. We're really looking at a 15 and then pare down from there. Did I not get that right?
That would be an option. I think at this point, we still have to direct staff that we're going to receive this for information as presented. Should council decide no, then this is also the time to indicate that we need to pare something down, in which that's why there was a slide particular to what could be not recommended, but could be pared down or scale something back outside of what is legislatively required. With these and potentially with Councillor Bateman's and anything others, like we're starting on a basis of what is coming up operationally and what we heard through the community outreach. And now we're informing the process. Okay, well, we've heard and received correspondence from this group or previous groups have indicated that. How does that come in? So an option that I would see staff bringing back is potentially we could add another 5% onto that to cover these, or it could be you could use this funding, you could use this reserve that we already have for these things, or we could find it out of here or contingency or whatever within that. But we haven't even accepted that we're okay with this.
Yeah,
It's just we're starting, so we have, if I brought this up at the end, then we're adding up something. This has to still go through a process. This is our first kick at this as a council.
I understand it's first kick at it, and I've done a few of these, so I'm aware of how it works. But basically, right now, we're going to accept what the staff has told us, and fine, and then we're going to throw another 2% in there. So that means 15.
Well, I suggested we look at the COVID relief fund for that because it's an eligible expense. But I'll have staff respond first and I'll go to Councillor Pearson.
To the chair, to Councillor Beddoes, we would look at options. So there'd be whether we could reallocate or push back a capital project or fund less of the Lot A from the COVID restart funds. We could provide some options to council and then also could potentially throw out the idea of an additional increase for an asset management plan for park resources, or that could be an optional item as well, which would be increase the tax amount more than 13.3%. But we would provide some options within the capital plan and some that may not impact the tax increase.
And then like we would seek a resolution from council at that time, similar to when service agreements came up a few years ago, where a bunch of them wanted an increase in their service agreements. So they came and presented to council. And then during those service level review meetings, council passed specific resolutions to say, direct staff to increase their service agreement, especially when we were transitioning line items to service agreements. Most of those bumped up. So council passed specific resolutions during those meetings to direct staff to use X funding to increase that. So Well, it could result in a 2% increase if that was council's direction at the time. Staff would provide multiple options. You know, a tax increase is the straightforward one, but as Mr. Curry said, it could be reallocating other reserve funding. So this could be funded without a tax increase, and we would seek council's direction on the pros and cons of doing that. We would provide that and seek council's direction on where to fund that project from if it's supported.
Counselor McMath and Bateman, or sorry, it was Pearson, I believe was next, then McMath and Bateman.
Yep, and I like the idea of it being discussed early on. Because I think that, you know, the initial ask for any amount of money is just an initial ask. And maybe there's other opportunities when staff and community associations start working together. Because the elephant in the room for us is the community association is providing a huge amount of benefit to our citizens of Sioux and not really controlled by us. But maybe that, and like we know the number, what they need to replace the lights, but maybe our contribution is significantly less than that or a portion up. And that's the discussion I think that is critical. I like the motion is the embryo of realizing in our budget process that the community association is a partner. And maybe we've got to formalize that process a little bit more. They have their own funding sources and maybe we're only assisting. So I like the idea of it being here as opposed to the end, to the mayor's statement. Thank you.
Yeah. You're actually out of order because we're not on that motion anymore, but thank you for speaking to it. It's all, that was important. Okay, it did tie into our whole general discussion. So, but thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor McMath and Bateman. No? Councillor Bateman.
Comment and question. So I think last year when we received the first draft, it came in at the 9.99% increase, and we were uncomfortable with that. And I believe Councillor Beddoes made a motion to keep it at under 7% or something of that sort. And I suspect we're all a bit uncomfortable with any kind of double-digit increase, very likely. And so my question through you to staff is, how much wiggle room is there? Obviously, there is the discretionary funds, all of which are entirely valid, but yeah.
That's correct. The discretionary costs have wiggle room. So discretionary is 549,000. So that could be 5%.
So beyond that, there is no other discretionary options within this budget.
There isn't a lot of room.
No.
No.
Okay, thank you.
But I think in part of that, this is where my understanding is that every department is going to be doing a presentation to council and then they'll have more information. So it may be after that, you can ask more internal questions there on and come to mind. So that's why here it's not the recommendation that staff brought forward. I recognize it turns into council's resolution is to accept this for information. And then the next pieces continue and then we get the information and then can start to weigh in on, and then that's where we'll learn more about why those asks are in there specifically. Councillor St. Pierre, then I'd like to open it up to the public.
Okay, I was just hoping for a bio break.
Okay, so yeah, you're welcome to go whenever never mind. I'll turn to members of the public, please. If you're interested in addressing council, now is the time on everything we've discussed so far today. If you could please turn on the microphone. There's just a button at the base of the stem. We would just require your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. May I speak to an issue regarding parks and environmental services now? My name is Peter Stoko. I live here in Souk. Yep.
Yes.
I was noting in the financial plan under parks and facilities, parks and environmental services, we've got key service area deliverables for 2024. And among those is continue progress on Little River pedestrian crossing. I was a bit alarmed. I find that wording a little bit vague. And I just wondered whether you could consider specifying a bit more precisely what your actual expectations are about what will be accomplished on this project this year. And in that regard, I would note that as I understood it from earlier, the presentation, 2/3 of the funding for this project is going to be actually allocated for this year. So I'm assuming that that means that 2/3 of the project should also be completed this year, other things being equal. So I just wanted to know whether that's my understanding about that is correct, and also if the district is successful in getting its application for provincial funding accepted, whether this project could actually be completed this year, given that this provincial funding would be on top of the federal funding that has already been approved.
Okay, do we have an answer for that today, or perhaps because the other piece would be that Parks and Facilities will be presenting at an open meeting in the coming weeks? But perhaps I can ask staff to answer what they can today. And then certainly this is a draft, so there's an opportunity to refine that language going forward. And then we get more input directly, but I'll just turn it to staff, please.
Sure. So working closely with the parks manager for just funding that project and confirming the funds required for this year. The plan is to complete 2/3 of the project this year. The grant, the portion of the provincial funds for the 1.3 million and some change is approved. The additional grant that we're waiting on a decision was the active transportation component, which is for $500,000. And I think the last update I had is we were trying to expedite the response on that grant application. So that's the last one that we're waiting for at this point. If it's not received, we have some other options that we may bring back to council to continue with the project. So at this point, the funding set up based on receiving that 500,000. So the project would be contingent on us getting that decision sooner. To start, sorry.
And I can clarify as far as the timing, like your question about could it be completed in 2024? No. There's fish windows, there's other environmental reasons why we can't construct there. We couldn't go in, there's procurement as well that we would have to undertake to do this project. So there's months of that needs to occur, as well as there's environmental and permitting. It would be almost impossible to have this project. It would be impossible to have this project completed in 2024 if we started even today. So that's why it is bridged over the 2 years, because there's, like I said, the environmental reasons mean you're not allowed to construct in certain time periods of the year. So we have to respect those windows as well. So that's why it's spread out over the 2 years.
We'd like to get it done too.
Okay, good. So if you might just consider refining the wording just to clarify what you actually hope to accomplish this year, rather than just continue progress on, I think I would be comfortable with that. So thank you.
No, that's a great takeaway. Thank you very much. Other speakers today?
Ellen Lewis. My first question was the general municipal taxes, or the show Souk at 1,594. Is that for a $400,000 home, or where does that come from?
The average tax, the average assessed value, would that be
The
correct?
average is, where does it come from? I mean, I have farm taxes, and even with that, there's no way I hit that. So where does that number come from?
It's typically the representative house is the average value of residential single family homes. So it's a specific class in BC assessment. It doesn't include like stratas or condos, and it's single family. And then so it would take the total number of assessment value divided by the number of those properties. And the representative house is a common stat that every municipality uses and that the provincial government collects. So there's charts available online where you can access that information and kind of look at the taxes on a representative house for all these municipalities.
So are you saying that this is just a portion that the municipality takes?
This is the general municipal taxes only. This is the portion that stays here, yes, that we collect that stays just for Soo.
It's not the total tax that's collected now,
That's correct.
just a portion. And what's the percentage? So
Roughly 44%.
roughly 44%. But it still doesn't seem, it still doesn't seem like the right number, especially when you have people on the waterfront that are paying upwards of 15,000 already and commercial is paying 50,000. It just doesn't fit. I don't know anybody that's paying under 3,000 now for property taxes. So it's just a question. You neither?
No, we are.
Okay. There's a whole lot of questions, but I'd be here all day. So I'll just stick with a couple because I don't understand. They're on page 15 with the financial planning horizon. 5-year revenue plan. You've got boat launch fees at 15,000 and rising. I thought it was a free boat launch. So where's the fees?
We've implemented the boat launch fees for quite some time. I think it's parking. You launch for free, you pay to park.
There's a boat launch fees and then there's parking fees. I don't know what the parking fees are. They're 20,000.
The potholes. They're two separate.
Oh, the
boat launch has
potholes.
been in existence for a while, and the parking fees would be for the potholes. That was a newer over the last couple of years
okay.
addition.
The province transferred the the entry lot to the District of Sauk. They
Thank you very
awarded a
much.
grant.
Yeah, just in time to have it renovated.
Yeah, and then we completed off the renovations, and then now that revenue comes to us, the upper portions are CRD. This is
The other
just the
part is
lower lot.
right, okay, so. And the Whiff and Spit expenditures too, that was another park that was given to us. It was a CRD park. And now the cost of that is pretty high too. I forget now where that was. But in looking at the whole budget and seeing that we're up to 42 million, and I'm thinking I've been here for 35 years, 37 years. Anyway, I'm trying to think what has changed for me with this budget that's increased to 42 million. Nothing in the good. I can't get out my driveway, can't get in my driveway. It's pretty much killed my business because people can't get in and out. People can't come in and buy fruits and vegetables. The water costs are atrocious. So, I mean, I think we have to question, what are we doing here? Seems like we're going backwards somehow. Are we doing anything by increasing our budget? Are we by getting more fire trucks, getting more police, whatever, increasing our population? Is that helping us any? I've said this before, build it and they will come, and what will it cost us? I made a list of a couple of things here. Every time you build something, do the DCCs cover this? The road costs. That's not just the cost, but maintaining them. Because now each road is at least, it's 3 lanes. It's called 3 lanes because you have the two roads that you drive and then the side lanes. So it's 3 lanes. Each of those are cost. The electrical costs, every time you put in a boulevard, you put in the lights. What are our electrical costs? I couldn't see the electrical costs, what they cost us now. It used to be more clear that you could see in the budget how much our costs were for electricity. Pumps, you know, the pump that the famous Sun River pump that's gone a few times. Every time those pumps are now belongs to the district and their costs. Every time you build, also the policing, you put in 1,000 houses, how many police do you need? Bylaw officers, fire, parks, the cost of parks. The cost of parks are outrageous and maintenance. I mean, I remember was just a few short years ago, our parks were $80,000. Now we're in the millions. Sidewalks and boulevards to keep them maintained, pruning the sides of the roads. I mean, all these things are, every time we do building, what's the cost to us? So I think we really have to look at this a little better. And with the province saying as well that we need to go build up to 4 buildings on each property, where are we going to put the traffic? Where are we going? Do we have the infrastructure? We don't have proper drainage. There's a lot of things we don't have. I think we have to back off and have some really good discussion with the public. What is it that we really want? What is it that we really need? It's a whole load put on council for this kind of a budget. It's a lot of money. And it's interesting. I was just talking with my son who lives in a town in Indiana of 50,000. 50,000. Their budget for the year is 54,000. They have a $6 million surplus. So there's ways of doing things. We just have to look around more. There's ways of doing things. They partner with different people. Now with this other situation with the Sioux Community Association and other groups, fundraising is something that we should be doing. I was with the Sioux Falls Fair for years, and we fundraise, as you know, and we had a budget of we had $40,000, over $40,000. They don't anymore because they don't fundraise. But there's also opportunities for writing for grants. The Sioux Community Association is not a federal, you have to have federal status in order to apply for certain monies, but they can apply through the district or with the district for certain grants, but it has going through corporations. I know there's one I'll pass it on to you. I know there's one because we were looking at it with Fuji, but there are different corporations that they can fund through. I don't think the taxpayer should be laying out any more money. I really don't. They don't have it. As you know, the price of fuel, you talked about it in the budget, it's outrageous. People are choosing whether they fill their tank or do they do half so they can buy a loaf of bread. So we have to be very conscientious about this, and 13% increase doesn't seem like much to some, but it has to be picked up somewhere. So that's all I got to say about it today.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Helen Ritz and I'm a downtown resident. Great job, great presentation. I wanted just to bring to your attention that the draft OCP, one of the top to-do items is to update the town center plan. And I noticed that that isn't on this 5-year priority list. And I was just curious why, if maybe it'd been overlooked, but I think the last one is from 2008. And certainly the town center is taking the bulk of the change. And I think doing a town center update is essential. And I wouldn't want it to hold off another 5 years. So hence I'm just bringing that forward.
Okay, thank you. That's a takeaway that we can raise when our planning because of the departments, it's sort of a good takeaway to ask at that time on where that may fit in. Okay, thank you. Okay, so seeing no other members of the public here to speak today, thank you very much for those that attended and for your thoughtful questions and comments. We'll go back to the motions that we had brought forward that we sort of tabled till after public input. So I have now emailed them, as did Councillor Bateman. So we'll start with the one that I raised, and then I also put in a follow-up motion. So because it's tabled, oh goodness, I'm procedurally in my head trying to figure out how to do this, but there's 2 pieces. So the one that I raised earlier, that council directs staff to incorporate funding for the Sioux Community Association for lighting at Fred Milne Park into the 2024 budget. So I'll leave that, and then I just have a follow-up motion. So that's moved. Any more discussion on this? Councillor St. Pierre?
Sorry about this. I'd like to do a friendly amendment to incorporate options for funding, which is what staff said they could bring to us. Directly incorporating the funding doesn't give us the option of actually looking at the options.
Okay, I'll deem that as friendly. So council directs staff to provide options for funding for the Sioux Community Association for lighting at Fred Mill Park into the 2024 budget.
Thank you.
Council directs staff to provide options for funding. I'll deem that as friendly as the mover. Okay, I'll call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Lajeunesse, you'll need to verbalize if you're in opposition. Otherwise, I'll assume you're in favor. Okay, so that's carried
Okay.
unanimously. The follow-up would be that council directs staff to report back on the potential for a revised service agreement with the Sioux Community Association at a later date. So I moved.
Oh, you moved it.
I moved it because we're in committee of the whole. It's just weird when the chair does this, but that's okay. So I've just raised this that we need to begin a conversation on a different relationship, a new service agreement, what all that looks like. It's not part of the budget. It's something that'll just take time over the next while, but at least it's just landed and this is sparking it. So I've emailed that to the right staff members, I hope. Okay. Okay, so I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next would be the one from Councillor Bateman that was moved and we parked it here. And it was that, yours is better than mine, that the committee of the whole recommend that council direct staff to develop 2024 service agreements for the Amber Academy of the Arts and the Sioux Harmony Project in the amount of $7,000 per organization. So that's moved by Councillor Bateman and is here for discussion. So Councillor Bateman, would you like to speak any further on this?
Well, I know it adds another 0.1% to this budget, but these are two groups that we have funded routinely over the years for very good reasons. And as we've done with earlier applicants like Need to Suicide Awareness and other groups, a service agreement would make sense. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm not comfortable with the language, mostly directing staff because it doesn't give them a choice. I mean, if, and I'm not saying that would happen, Amber Academy or the Harmony Project were not available in a timely manner for such a service agreement, it doesn't give them a lot of flexibility. They're being directed, do the thing. And the specific amount might also be up for negotiation. So I'm a little concerned that this may be less flexibility than staff might prefer or that we might prefer.
I think it's a starting, it's a beginning. We do direct staff to do things. They may come back and say there's no interest in the groups or we actually they're looking for this amount and then that can be discussed later. So,
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just cognizant that a member of council needs to go and yeah, okay. So all those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The other piece here would be the motion that was in front of us earlier that I just need to pull here. It is that the committee of the whole recommend that council receive the draft 2024 to 2028, right? Financial plan report for information. We're receiving for information. That's moved by Councillor St. Pierre. There's no seconder, so this is the beginning, and then the other departmental pieces will come, and then we'll look to refine, keep, edit as we go along. The only piece I would add and what I'm looking for when Parks, if you can ask Parks when they present, is I've noticed that at Broomhill Park or the Fishy Park, there's some equipment that has been completely removed there. I'm guessing it may have fallen apart. So is there a plan to install something there? And what does that look like? And the potential to engage with school-age children in terms of what they would like to see? So that's just an ask for later. I don't expect an answer to that. Counselor St. Pierre, or pardon me, Pearson. St. Pearson.
Okay, I'm just, okay, so we're receiving the plan for information only at this point. At what point do we put our concerns forward about where we think that plan should land back to staff so that they have an opportunity between now and some of the details?
I think if there's if there's anything to respond to today, just generally speaking, this is a good time to share that out. And then perhaps when we receive the departmental more in detail pieces, you could also refine that there. And then hopefully those will also draw more other interested members of the public to comment. I haven't received any nothing emailed on this budget, but we're starting it. And so maybe that's where we can refine it. But I think if there's overarching general, maybe share that out now so that our staff know it.
Okay, so I'm going to share it. I think that a 13% increase is going to set off some alarm bells for a lot of people. I think we have enormous pressure from inflation, cost of living, all of the things that are facing our taxpayers. And I think that I would myself personally prefer to see that somewhere in that 10% range, like 9.99, a single digit type number. It looks, when we look at the history, this is, we're going, I know our financial, and I appreciate the work staff's done. And I understand that there's some discretionary piece in there. You mentioned a 5%, which 13 to 5 is 8. So I'm thinking that I would appreciate personally to see that budget come in. I could support a budget in that 10% range or less. So, and I mean, it's hard for me to even say 10%, but I know cost pressures out there. That's my personal.
No, I
don't think it's a motion because
No.
I don't think we're approving anything, right? So.
No, we're receiving for information, but I think it's just, we're sitting here and staff need to know how this work is resonating. I recall one time we asked, give us everything, and it came in around 18%. Is okay, we know that, and we know to work that down. Counselor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'm just going back to last year when we were something similar, not as grim as this year, but again, we listen to what the departments say, and then that's when we come back and say, well, I'm sorry, something has to change here. And I remember last year, staff went away and sharpened their pencils, talked to all the different departments, and they came back with that 6.99 or something. So I'm assuming, hopefully, it can work a little bit this year, but I wouldn't want to lock in a percentage point till I've heard from everybody. But I share Councillor Pearson's concern. I would not want to go to the public with a 13 or 15% increase. We've got to find a way to ease that up. But it's going to be pretty grim even at 9.9 if that's what we achieve. But I think we need more information yet. This is the first go of it, and we get down to the nitty gritty as the weeks go by. I think staff has also heard, and I'm sure they were well aware that this is going to raise some eyebrows. But anyways, I do again appreciate the work you've done. Very comprehensive. I like it very much, but we've got some work ahead of us. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Counselor Bateman.
Yeah, so my final comments would relate to, yes, I think we have to carve it back. That's an important part of the process. I want to thank staff for such this is such an evolutionary process, and these documents get clearer and more readable. And it's a great document, and you've made some very good points vis-a-vis the historic pattern of suit taxes and how we have been well, it's a good deal to live in Souk, put it that way. But that's still not in this day and age when everything is going up crazy. Anyway, I'm not speaking very well here, but thank you. That's it.
Others? Counselor McMath? Counselor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I share the concerns raised by Councillor Pearson, Beddoes and Bateman, with the significant proposed increase. But I also just want to thank Mr. Curry for his presentation. It was very clear and well done, so thanks for that.
Okay, thank you very much, staff, for your work on this. My understanding is staff is going to survey out council on their availability for next week. And so we can keep moving some meetings along to get rolling here. The other piece is what I'm asking, and it's been raised around strategic planning, is I need you to take that away and come back to me with when you would like to do that work and what it would look like for you, so we can actually look at planning that in and amongst everything else as well. So that's just, you don't have to answer that right now, but just what does that look like? So we can advance both of those pieces there. Okay, so we've already resolved, this is where it's always sort of backing out of the committee of the whole. So we're at new business now, and I understand Councillor St. Pierre has a motion he would like to bring forward. It's a slightly out of order, but it's timing and related to the Victoria Regional Transit Commission meeting, a presentation and an ask he has as the commission, and a resolution that he needs by council to make that happen. So that's just the awkward time. So as chair, I'm indulging and allowing the councillor to move this or to read it. Well, I guess you're right. Can we resolve? We can adjourn the committee, like we can resolve out of, thank you for that, resolve out of committee of the whole. It's always weird. So I'll ask that council resolve out of committee of the whole into council. And I need a motion for that. So that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, and we're in committee of the whole, so I still only need one mover. So all those in favor? That's unanimous. Now we're sitting back at council, and go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre, into the microphone.
Okay, so this is to the Transit Commission. I've been in conversation with one of their staff, and indications are that there
So
might,
you need procedurally, this is a notice of motion. You need to read it out. And as the chair, I am willing to waive notice given the time sensitive matter of this. So I'll allow you to read it out, second it, then we can discuss it.
okay, so resolution is that council support a delegation to the Victoria Transit Commission to discuss making LTNC routes free in certain LTNC routes free. And I can provide more details.
So I would not use acronyms, but local transit
Transit routes.
Local transit routes. Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so basically we have a number of routes in Souk that are underutilized and have very infrequent service. And because of it, nobody barely uses them. They're basically wasting resources, and the service is not making any money off of them. This is confirmed. And what I'm hoping to get from the commission is a report back from their staff with a cost benefit analysis of making those routes free, so that we could pursue the option of having a pilot project to make those routes free. This would allow us to work within the community to try and actually increase ridership on routes that would then become free. It would help seniors, it would help students, it would help low income. And ideally, we could work with the Better Business Bureau, sorry, not Better Business, Chamber of Commerce, and with other partners like active transportation groups to basically try and push the pilot project and increase ridership. This will help us get us some people off the roads in terms of Route 14 and so on and so forth. It ideally doesn't cost us anything, but could actually move us in a better direction in terms of transit and getting better transit service. So that's it. I'm willing to go to the delegation. I welcome anyone who wants to come with me if we approve this.
Okay, so I forwarded this email now to staff. I'll send it to, sorry, it's the motion's at the very bottom of this. Sorry, Ms. Barnes, it's in the very bottom. And I believe all the staff there have it. So I'll go to the seconder and then I'll speak on this. Can you turn off that microphone? Thank you.
Well, I must say it's absolutely what's needed. The number of times I see the bus on Whiffenspit, for example, roaring along entirely empty, it's crazy to me. So whether this is a short-term offer to encourage more people onto the bus or long-term guarantee to get them to the heart of town, absolutely. Yeah.
So just speaking, as I do sit on the Transit Commission, the commission only meets quarterly. So that's the time sensitive nature of getting a delegation request 10 days in advance. They want council resolutions when it's coming from a local government to do that. So that's why this request is requesting Victoria Regional Transit staff to do something. It's not requesting our staff to do anything. So it is specific. It's just our resolution today will give Councillor St. Pierre as the advocate that he has the support of council and he's here today on behalf of council to do X. I do sit as a commission member there, one of 2 West Shore representatives. So I have to bring all of that context in, which is why it's helpful when there are different pieces that they come from others on council as well. So the way that transit works now, these are the community buses, the smaller ones that you see around. I've seen the same as Councillor Bateman where there's 1 or 2 people on it. And I've used it myself to get into town. If residents use that bus to transfer to the 61, they have to pay again. There's no transfer. So that's why in terms of moving people, but if they use it to move around town, then it would be free transit in Souk. That bus has to run anyway. And then if people pick up, they will pay for the 61 to take them in and out of town. So this way it would potentially encourage more ridership. For those that are transferring, it'll save them because they then have to buy a day pass of $5 to get to from, say, Whiffenspit to downtown or from Sun River to downtown. They're paying double fare because there's no transfer system. It's 2 different tickets. So this may encourage more use of that bus. And then hopefully as more transit buses come online and service level adjusted, we know that traffic and congestion is a problem. We have buses that are all running. How can we encourage more ridership on these local routes to potentially free up more internal transport, knowing that the other fare is still collected? So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, but I am in support of it because it's another way of just trying to encourage alternate forms of transportation. So it's really just here so that Councillor St. Pierre can approach the Transit Commission, put that letter forward. He has the support of council and then can advocate there, and then it'll see where it lands at the commission. Councillor Beddoes, then Pearson.
Yeah, I'm voting. No, I know, I commend you for bringing that forward, because I thought that if you got on a bus down Whiffenspit, that you'd get a transfer to the regular bus, and it's not that way. That's not right. So all the more power to you. I'll support the motion.
You were ready just to call the question. Sorry, Councillor Pearson. It's just this is new information. Like the other surprise for residents is with the rapid transit route. Then if you take rapid transit, then you need to pay to get on the 61 to get into Souk, because the rapid transit bus doesn't come to Souk, it terminates in Langford, and then you catch the 61 to come home. So if you're going return trip, it's fine, but if you're only, let's say, going in with someone and coming back, you're paying double the fare to get home. And that's another problem as well for another day. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. I will now call for adjournment of today's meeting, moved by Council.
Do you need to rise and report on the committee of the whole resolutions
Oh, do we need to
procedurally? Sorry.
procedurally do those motions as council?
That's
Yes.
normally what happens is,
So can we say now, sitting as council, that counts, do them as a block? That yeah, that council endorse the committee of the whole resolutions. Okay, so that's moved by Counselor St. Pierre and seconded by Counselor Pearson.
Yeah, no, I don't want my. No, I'm fine.
All those in favor?
I.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, now can I call for a motion to adjourn, please, by Counselor Pearson, seconded by Counselor St. Pierre. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Stay tuned for next dates. And again, my comment around strategic planning. Thank you.